Today, our guests are Paul Perkins and Anita Brooks.
You might say, in a banker's term, I'm on borrowed time.
Share the gospel clear and strong. Stand for, claim your heritage of truth.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today, our guests are Paul Perkins and Anita Brooks.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you may remember Anita from another interview we did about her book, Getting Through What You Can't Get Over. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much.
This is your new book, Death Defied, Life Defined, a miracle man's memoir, which Anita wrote with you. So tell us why it's called Death Defied, Life Defined.
I guess the reason it's called that is because I never gave up. And I've been through death, and today I've got life again thanks to, the good Lord.
You've gone through a heart transplant, kidney transplant?
Correct. I had a double transplant at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I had 2 other open heart surgeries, so
Okay.
this was the 3rd open heart surgery that I had.
Okay,
And the second one, I also passed away.
yeah.
And then the 3rd one, I passed away, but I had a pretty good reason to pass away because they only gave me a 2% chance of surviving, which that's not too good odds.
But God just wasn't ready for you to be with him yet.
God had a mission for me, and fortunately, meeting up with Anita, I found the mission.
Good. And what was that mission?
Well, Anita and I met one time, and I'd never met her before, but I'd heard she was a great book writer. My
And she
wife
is.
especially, and so I walked up to her and I said, my mission is to spread the word of never giving up and trusting in God because He will take care of us. And I want you to write it, Anita. And so Anita didn't even know me, so she didn't give me a affirmative answer for a while.
Smart girl.
But she did later,
Uh-huh.
and here we are today.
Was that hard to do? Were you in the same town doing this, or did you have to do it across email, or what?
It was interesting. Paul and I actually live in the same small bedroom community. And it's fascinating how God kind of aligns things. So in 1997, I actually donated a kidney to my sister. I'm a living donor.
Mm-hmm.
And unbeknownst to me, flash forward all these years later, God had a plan. And by then I was writing books professionally. But Paul and I, even though we live in this small community, we just never had run across each other's paths. We knew who each other was, but we'd never met. Mm-hmm. And so we were out at dinner one evening, and this man walks up to me and he says, "I want you to write my story." And I kind of, stood back a little bit. Paul's, how tall are you?
6'4".
6'4". Yeah. So I was just kind of pulling back a little bit, and I said, okay. And he begins to tell me he's on his way to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'm writing a book. I was writing Getting Through What You Can't Get Over at that time. I said, let me finish that. Let's see what happens for you with the transplant, and then we'll go from there. And then in April of 2014, just a couple of weeks after his transplant, I happened to be in Minnesota, for a business coaching thing that I was doing. And so I drove down to Rochester. And I had let Paul and his wife know that I wanted to stop by and visit. And I'll never forget, as I'm walking down the hall and I can see into the room before I walk in, and here's Paul, and he's almost bouncing in his chair just a couple of weeks after that transplant. Almost first thing out of his mouth is, "I want you to write my story."
That's great. Now, there was a young man who donated the heart and the kidney, right?
Yes.
And you talk a little bit about his family in the book. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I had not. You have to get permission by both the donor and the, and myself to meet, but paperwork was still going through, and I consented, and actually immediately, and she did too, the mother, father of the young man, and Anita asked me if it was okay with me if she interviewed the mother, and so I immediately said that'd be outstanding. We know of no other books that have ever been written about the family feelings of both the donor and also the donee family. So I told Anita, I think it's an outstanding idea. So she got permission and she did the interview with the family. It went well, and as a result, I think that it definitely brought both families together, and we know the family, and they're from the area up there. And believe it or not, you know, I was within 5 miles probably of where he was at when he passed away. And so it was a very emotional time. I never read her section until the book was completed. Anita did not give me permission to change anything, which thank goodness she did. It's outstanding, but anyhow, it's very, very emotional.
Yeah, I'm sure. And the mother, she felt really good that she was able to share her son's story, didn't she?
The mother is just father. They're both working people. They have their little business, and I was so impressed because I'm a banker, bringing tears to my eyes. But first time she saw me, she put her head to my heart. She said, you know, Cooper had a heart of gold, and I'm so happy that God gave it to you. And it just about broke me up. But
I'll bet.
we've become we don't tear up now whenever we talk, so.
In this book for their family, for us, it's such an honor because their family, it's become a treasure for them, and we've gotten to honor their son. And not only does he have the legacy of his organs giving life to Paul, but it went out to I believe it was over 50 people were touched by Cooper's life. So we really wanted to honor Cooper and his family for that sacrificial gift. And now for them, this is just another lasting legacy. So we were happy to do that for them.
What do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned through all these experiences?
I think the biggest lesson I learned was, you know, you have to relax. You have to have some humor because your life is entrusted to God, and where He decides to take you is the way you're going to be. So as a result, I didn't have the tenseness. I didn't have the nervousness. I knew where I was going, and as a result, today, I have no doubt where I'm going, and I'm not afraid to die. And I would, you know, I just have the trust and the love that I know that God is, He's given me a mission to do, and that's to spread the word of, you know, of God through our country who needs a lot of love today. And as a result, my life is in His hands.
Well, how did you battle fear during your illnesses?
How did I battle fear?
Yes.
Well, I guess I never really thought about it. I never doubted that I was going to wake up. I mean, the greatest feeling for any of you folks that's out there that are listening is when you wake up after an operation. But when you get a 2% chance of surviving and you wake up, I never had fear when I went in because I knew I was going to. I'm a competitor. I've never believed in coming in last, and I've always I played basketball in college, and so I knew what it was to compete, and I took it upon myself to think, I'm going to battle, and I did.
Well, how did your family grow through this?
Very tough, and that's a very good point you're bringing up because a lot of the book that Anita has written into the book is about the support person. And I will tell you, the support person has more issues than what the recipient of any kind of transplant has. And my wife, 46 years, she was absolutely the rock of Gibraltar. And she stood by me. She's a big believer. That's why she loves Anita's books, because they're all inspirational and they're all written in words of God. And she was strong, and she hung in there. And my kids, I have 2 boys and a girl, somebody was at my side at all times at Mayo Clinic. It made it very difficult for our family because we run a pretty good sized banking chain in Missouri and also insurance, and they are all involved. It's a big family business, but we stuck together as a family, and you must have that when you go into any kind of problems like I had. But yes, I love every one of my family peoples to the last day of my life, because they were with me when I needed them.
Is the time that you spend together any different or more precious now than it was before?
I think there's no doubt, because I think of people, I saw young kids, 6, 7 years old, that were waiting for hearts, and I saw a 40-year-old die down my hall waiting for a heart. And it taught me a lesson, and that is, don't think of myself. Think of other people. And every day I wake up, to answer your question, it's a blessing. And Linda and I live it to its fullest. And like I said, I thank God every day that I'm alive, because you might say, in a banker's term, I'm on borrowed time.
Well, Anita, did you have chronic illness too?
I didn't have chronic illness, but when I donated the kidney, in my situation, actually, I had a severe allergic reaction to the pain meds, and that caused me to have a near-death experience of my own, which was another commonality that we had. So I understood a lot of what Paul was describing when we sat down to interview and talk about the book. And those are things that many people deal with, though. Chronic illness or recovery, we don't understand sometimes going into a very serious surgical procedure. It's not just the physical healing that you need, but it's the emotional healing, the spiritual healing that you need. And for me, when I went through the kidney transplant, that was actually my salvation experience. I was saved in a Denver, Colorado hospital. I wasn't saved in a church. But my commitment to God is so strong that Job 13:15 is my motto verse. And it says, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him.
What would you recommend for people who are going through chronic illness, how to get through it?
Well, I think, again, first thing I would say is trust in God and follow the lessons that he's set forth that are in the Bible. And, then, like I said, be competitive like I was, or still am, but never give up.
And I will say this too, because I had the privilege of interviewing Paul's family members and some friends. And Paul is a very determined man. And I also was able to interview physicians at Mayo Clinic and in St. Louis as well. And there was a theme, a pattern in what they told us about those who have the best odds of survival, but not just surviving to be alive, but surviving to have a good quality of life, and all of them stress that. But those factors were a faith in something greater than yourself, and I thought that was very interesting that every physician mentioned that.
Wow.
The second thing was that they needed a strong family support system, and the third thing was having that personal determination, that decision that you make despite how you feel, because Paul is very strong today, but as we talk about in the book, he did struggle with some depression, which is very common to those who went through those kinds of surgical procedures. But what has happened is he had people who came alongside him and pushed him when he was during those times.
Right,
And
that's
so that helped.
so important. I had a brother that is a very big, I consider one of the war heroes of today, and boy, he came up there and he didn't always, he used his foot once in a while, and I needed it, but that's the kind of support sometimes you need. And I will tell you that depression is common. A lot of people going through any kind of illness, heart, cancer, whatever, your medicines are going to give you problems. And they spent about 6 weeks on me after I got my heart, talking about issues that I would have. Just like a while ago, I was tearing up because it's still sentimental. It's still very emotional. But they had to know when they gave my heart, it was a gift. And they had to know that I would not give up and I would use it to the best interest of the family of the donor. So,
Okay.
and I think that's very important to know.
Well, if you had one thing that you wanted readers to take from your story, what would it be?
I hate to say this again, but I would say, folks, you never give up. I know, I remember playing basketball. We never gave up. But when we went into overtime and we lost, that was the final bell, and we accepted that. And if you lose your life, that's God's will, and you have to be willing to accept that and not be afraid.
Where can people find more information about you, Paul, and you, Anita, online?
Paul has a website, pauleperkins.com. I have a website, anitabrooks.com. And you can find information about both of us on our websites. And the books are available at all major retailers and independents as well as online.
Well, thank you, Paul and Anita, for being our guest.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jeannie. It was a pleasure.
God bless you.
Share